And we are live. Hi, I am Max Gieser, and we are here with Patric Jameson, who hopefully won't make this interview all about himself. Patric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good.
How
How
has
about
life
yourself?
been? I'm good. How has life been since Married at First Sight? Now that the reunion is wrapped up and everything.
It's been a little crazy, for sure. Um, just didn't really know what to expect when things wrapped up. Had a lot of friends and family reaching out to me. I spent a lot of time on the phone with, you know, people that I know and people that I don't know, that have been curious about the whole experience. That's been overwhelmingly positive. So, um, but a little time consuming and maybe a little bit energy draining at times. So I've had to kind of take time for myself, make sure I get my bike ride in or my exercise. Make sure I'm taking care of myself during the whole process so I don't get too depleted.
Yeah, I could imagine. Uh, how did you end up on Married at First Sight?
Kind of interesting. I was recruited through my LinkedIn profile. So uh,
Wow.
I didn't know, I had heard of this show. I don't know how, but I had heard of it probably because it's kind of a wacky concept. But I'd never watched it. Um, I got an email through my LinkedIn profile in early January of 24. And it was kind of like, I'm a casting director for this relationship show. Don't know if you're single, don't know if you're interested, all of that. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, this is just spam. So I just kind of blew it off for, I don't know, probably a couple days. And then I kind of got curious a little bit, like, I don't know, it looked a little bit legit. So I decided to call the number, and then I pretty quickly was on a Zoom call with this person, and they, were asking me a lot of questions, and that's when they revealed what the show was, and I was kind of like, no way, no, I wouldn't do that. And so kind of wrapped up the call with I'll think about it, but in my mind, I was just kind of like, I don't think so. And then I don't know, a couple more days went by, it was kind of noodling around in the back of my head. And I thought, well, I'm kind of curious and, maybe I kind of go through the process for a while. If I get uncomfortable, I'll just pull the ejection handle and be done. Um, and so again, kind of started walking the path, had a follow-up call. I was really quickly on a call with two of the three experts, who I didn't know at all because I hadn't watched the show. And then there was just lots of questions, written questions, verbal questions, all kinds of process. And I just kind of figured, like I said, if I get uncomfortable, I'll exit. But I wanted to see if it was a thorough process. As I learned more, and I kind of thought, well, let's see what they got. And yeah, just kind of got pulled into it. So,
So you really do talk with the three experts before you get Married at First Sight.
yes, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I talked with. Seems to me that I talked with all three of them, but I could be wrong.
At least one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was probably two of them, but not all three of them
Hmm.
that I talked with. Yeah.
So so your first reach out from casting was in January, and then when did you start filming? Like when was the marriage or whatever, the wedding?
So after a pretty intense, probably week, I left the country. I was on a paragliding trip. It had been previously scheduled. I let them know I'm leaving the country. I'm not going to have internet, and So I was coming back from that trip on the 2nd of February, and they wanted they hit me with an email saying they want to come over and film at my house like the next day. And I was like, I need a day. I was getting
Yeah.
in at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. So that was going to be a Saturday. So I said, okay, Sunday. I figured, they're going to bring a person with a microphone and somebody with a camera. And I mean, they showed up with this big crew. I don't know, it was probably 12 to 15 people, lights, all of this, filming the outside of the house, the inside of the house. Of course, the neighborhood's all in a buzz. And I'm like, holy cow. And I met Dr. Pia. I didn't know she was coming, but she arrived at some part of the way into that and did what I've come to understand is her normal shtick, where she kind of goes around the house and opens cabinets and tries to like catch you off guard kind of thing. And I was fairly nervous because I had never been in front of a camera for any length of time, certainly not for something that involved. But kind of just rolled with it. And then, so that was Sunday, and then probably the Sunday the 3rd, and then, and I might be a week off. I think it was actually the following weekend. At any rate, then they had me going into a studio for several days and sitting in front of a camera, answering a whole lot of questions. And then they asked me if I had a couple of buddies that I could bring into town. And so by this time, I'm kind of thinking, well, I must be like fairly far down the process because they're spending a lot of effort.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know what their process was. And so I reached out, got a couple of buddies to commit, that they asked me on a Thursday and wanted them there on a Saturday. And they said, we want to do a filming in a bar or something like that. And so I had a couple of buddies from I went to the Air Force Academy, so I keep in close touch with some of those. They're my very, very closest friends in the world. A group of about 25 people, and 2 of them dropped everything and showed up on Saturday. They flew them down, and but it was that Thursday before that Saturday that they said they wanted to do another in-home filming session. Okay, and that's when Pastor Cal showed up, and then he told me I was going to be on the show. So, and then they told me, oh yeah, and your buddies are coming down for the bachelor party, and oh, you're getting married in 10 days. So
Wow.
it was all, it was a lot. It came hot and heavy, fast and furious, whatever you want to, euphemism you want to use. So
Yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
Now, you mentioned on the show that you have 2 sons. What did they think about you going on the show?
One of them was not in favor and kind of bowed out at that time and just asked not to be part of it. And I said, that's fine. My other son he was all on board, but neither one of them could attend the wedding. There was just my son that was all on board. He was already committed to being in the wedding on the same day that I was getting married, and he was going to be down in Cancun or something like that, involved in that wedding. So they weren't able to make it. But my one son was very, very in favor and very supportive. He actually came out for a filming session about 2/3 of the way through the production, but that didn't make the show.
Yeah, I didn't think so. What did he think of Rhonda? Did he like her?
Yeah, I mean, he hadn't met her before. It was, we were heading out to go to the Rhonda's family reunion that she had been planning for quite some time. And so he was going to participate in that. So they did a filming session. Cameras were not allowed at the location that Rhonda had set up for her family reunion. The owner of the property didn't sign a release, didn't want cameras on his place. So, but yeah, my son was there and participated, and got to meet her kids and grandkids, and yeah, so it was. I think everybody gelled. Everybody had a good time.
Nice. So pretty instantly on the show, you are talking about space. Are you ever not thinking about space?
It
Ever?
is it's kind of my passion.
Yeah,
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 I
yeah.
mean, I've where I live, they're having a gingerbread house competition, and so I got the kit, and I'm looking at it like, okay, how do I turn this into a rocket ship?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of stuff. Yeah, I love it. I was a little guy living in Hawaii. My dad was in the Air Force, and we watched them as they brought the Apollo astronauts down the flight line after, they would retrieve them from, one of their missions. It's been a part of my life ever since, I went to the Air Force Academy. I couldn't fly. My eyes weren't good enough.
Oh, that
So
sucks. Yeah.
the next best thing was that they were like Space Command, and I'm like, okay, what do they do? I don't know, but it's better than any other option that they were talking about. So, and it just turns out I loved it, and
Yeah.
I did my whole career in it. I did military space. I was in the National Reconnaissance Office. I got out of the military after 10 years. I spent the rest of my career working commercial space, civil space, NASA programs. Yeah, but my role has been all across the spectrum of satellite and space operations, including launch and on-orbit operations. I worked 2 shuttle missions as a payload flight director. Getting to work with and get to know the astronauts, and yeah, I just loved it and continue to love it.
Great. Well, back to Earth. What was the wedding day like for you overall? What was this crazy experience like?
Yeah, I'd say that the lead up was the roller coaster ride as far as emotions,
Mm-hmm.
but the wedding day I was calm, kind of like, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm doing it intentionally. Um, it's going to be hard. I don't know how in the ways it's going to be hard, but I went into it with an open heart and fully committed to give it my best effort, and so I was pretty calm, at peace.
And, yeah, well, I mean, like, but what was the moment like meeting Rhonda? I mean, that a stranger, like what was that experience like? Like, how nervous were you? Were you just totally peaceful? Was it just like acceptance?
I was pretty peaceful. I am a very roll with it kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
I figured I can work with whatever comes down that aisle, and I know I'm going to give it my best effort. So, yeah. The first time I saw her, she had a big smile. Her eyes were bright. She looked energetic. She was wearing a red dress, which blew me away because at the Air Force Academy, each class has a class color, and ours was red. And I
Oh,
had intentionally worn a red, kerchief, kind of as a nod to my academy classmates and class. So yeah, that was a bold statement on her part that just happened to resonate with me as well. Yeah, it was. I don't know. I was just excited to get going and see how this how
yeah.
this how this would turn out.
So you instantly seemed pretty like charmed by Rhonda, and you enjoy her rebellious flair you talk about. Looking back, were there any red flags about Rhonda that popped up relationship wise, or were there any that you thought of at the time that you thought maybe this won't work?
No, certainly not on the wedding day.
Hmm.
Of course, later on, there's things. I mean, you're thrust into, getting to know somebody. Production adds a layer to that is hard for people that haven't done this to understand. But man, I didn't know. it's a heavy burden emotionally. It's a heavy time commitment. During the honeymoon and probably the 2 weeks after that, there wasn't a day off. So probably for a month we went straight. During the honeymoon, we were, either getting ready to be on camera, or, wrapping up from being on camera for 12, 14 hours a day, sometimes a little longer. I mean, it's exhausting. You don't have a whole lot of time to get to know somebody off away from cameras. And so it's pretty stressful, I gotta say.
Yeah. So you guys get to the airport. This is after the wedding night. And we learned that you sent everyone a video about how to join the Mile High Club. Was this you?
Yeah, that was me. That was just trying to be, to kind of lighten it up. I didn't expect that anybody was gonna, do anything other than laugh at it. A buddy of mine sent it to me, and it made me laugh. So I thought, and that was one of the things that I had never watched the show until I was already told I was on it.
Yeah.
And I watched about a half a dozen episodes of what was airing at the time, which was season 17. And it just seemed like there was just like one big issue after another. And it was like, dun, 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 all the time, And I thought, I went to like a Barnes and Noble and got a bunch of like stupid games and party tricks and, whatever, and put them in this bag of fun, I called it. And I thought, if things get heavy for Rhonda and I, we can call a timeout and pull something out of the bag. That's kind of the headspace I was in when I sent the video. Just, hey, let's laugh a little bit, because there's a lot.
Josh and Jalen, they used the instructions allegedly. So yeah,
I don't know about that.
Did you feel that this game of tricks and fun worked for you and Rhonda? Did it diffuse situations?
Yeah, we definitely pulled things out of the bag of tricks or bag of fun, whatever I called it, at times. So yeah, it was helpful at some level, but there was so much going on, with the production schedule, and then starting to get to know somebody, and then, having disconnects. I think we learned pretty quickly that we had some communication issues that were tough to work out. I mean, the whole time it was something that we were struggling with, but trying to work on. But so it was just there was a lot happening. So a little party game wasn't. I guess I thought we'd have more free time.
Yeah.
We just didn't, So.
Well, let's get to these communication issues a little bit. So we get this initial scene in Panama where this is the way the edit shows. The edit shows you rambling on and on. That's how it's shown to us. I'm not saying this is what happened. And then Rhonda starts talking about how she got robbed. And then it shows you getting distracted by Bree and not asking her questions about being robbed. And Rhonda does not seem happy about this.
Yeah.
How did you interpret the way that this interaction occurred?
Yeah, I mean, if I remember right, in that episode, they have kind of a montage of me talking, and then, cut to another scene of me talking, cut to another scene of me talking. So, I mean, obviously, there was some back and forth. There was some interchange. I think that was a bit of, for dramatic effect. But, she was feeling apparently at that time like, I was talking more than she was. I didn't feel that was the case at the time. But, we didn't talk about it off camera. And so I was just trying to relate. She would say something, I would say, hey, I had an experience similar, or whatever, just trying to have a conversation. The first that it really came out to me that she had an issue was during the romantic dinner. And then she brought it up, and I was like, huh, that I wasn't aware of that, and I tried to like process that a bit. And, I think caught me off guard. But, I tried to take that to heart. I think, going forward, I was more aware of it. I really didn't want to, at least in my mind, believe that I was the guy that talked, too much. I don't like that guy, when I'm in a situation and there's somebody talking too much. But I also had a lot, going on in my head. There was the cameras there. If there's like an awkward, interaction, or a pregnant pause, I tend to want to fill it. I don't like that open space. And so and then there was just the whole environment that I think, probably had me a little bit off balance. So, but I was trying to listen and trying to
you mentioned
react.
that she didn't say this off camera. Do you wish that she had, or did you feel that it was odd that she didn't talk to you about it off camera?
Yeah, I kind of did, but I think there's probably many reasons why that didn't happen. One is that we just didn't have that much time, off camera. I think maybe we had an hour in the morning, maybe an hour somewhere in the middle of the day, maybe an hour at the end of the day. And so, yeah, I don't know, but it did catch me a bit off guard at that romantic dinner. It would have been nice to have a heads up that she was feeling that way. Then I could have maybe, made adjustments. But anyway, it is what it is.
So you and Rhonda go on a tandem bike ride with Brittany and Will, and we learned that your last relationship ended 6 months prior to you getting married at first sight. And Rhonda tells Brittany that when she started to question you about it, you got defensive, and that your long-term marriage fucked you up, and that she doesn't want an insecure man. What did you think about her interpretation of you and these events?
Yeah, I don't know. When I watched that scene in the episode, she certainly wasn't, in my memory, saying those kind of things to me. So the fact that she's saying them to somebody else at that early stage is, I don't know, it doesn't hit me exactly right. But there was definitely, I was getting triggered in ways that I really hadn't been triggered in a while. And so I was trying to process my way through that. I think on the flip side, she was getting triggered in certain ways. So, I think there's been a narrative, with the older couples that, oh, they've been around, they should have this all figured out. And it's just not the case. We're human beings like everybody else. We've been through a lot. Maybe it's actually a disadvantage because we actually, we've had a lot of history that some, maybe we haven't really fully processed through, and really in our selves haven't fully dealt with, I think. So yeah, it was an intense time of, trying to get to know somebody, having things come up that trigger emotions and feelings that neither one of us had probably felt in a while, trying to navigate through that together, on camera, off camera. It was really challenging.
That makes sense. Renda also brings this up sometimes. Like, she talked about feeling smothered, like she'll want to go to the store alone and not be with you all the time when you get back to Austin. Like, do you know, like, I didn't really understand where this was coming from. Did you understand where this was coming from? Like, were you guys spending so much time together? I mean, I know you were because of the show, but like, did you know?
Yeah, I think really where it was coming from is she had not been in she hadn't been, her previous divorce was 25 years earlier. So she had essentially been living on her own for 25 years. And so there was probably some fears that crept in about, hey, I normally get up and I do this and I do this and I go there and I do these things. And, I want to make sure, whatever. I think it was just probably some fears that were surfacing then about, having to perhaps give up some of that autonomy, and maybe some of that freedom that was triggering for her.
Yes. So when did you guys come up with this safe word of pineapple? And when was it used? What's up with pineapple?
That's a good question. I actually don't have like much of a memory of that at all. So
Convenient.
when that came up on the show, to my knowledge, that word was never used in a safe word kind of scenario. So okay. I had completely forgotten about that.
Doesn't sound very safe.
Yeah, I did have a vague memory of it. I'm like, I guess we did have that, but yeah.
When we get to Austin, did you and Rhonda live together in the apartments provided by the show?
Yeah, we did. We moved in. She works from home and has a home office. So, I mean, we were in those apartments for 2 months ish. But on a work day, she would get up, get herself ready, and then depart and go back to her home office where she would do her work day, and then come back and after the work day was over. But I would say probably about 2/3 of the way through the apartment portion of production, yes, we were spending less and less time in the apartment. More time at her house, or I would go back to where I was living, and that kind of thing. So we kind of gravitated away from the apartment for probably the last 2 weeks of the whole apartment experience.
Were you living separately at that time? Like, were you sleeping separately?
Sometimes we would
Uh-huh.
be at her house. Sometimes I would sleep at my house, but I would say more often than not, we were at her place.
Okay. Were you just like done with the apartments and not being at your own home and stuff? Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I think she was more done with it than I was. I would have been fine just being in the apartment, but I think they weren't really holding our feet to the fire, and so about being in the apartment. So, and she had her dogs and other things that was a little more complicated being in the apartment. And so when she started gravitating more towards her house and not getting in trouble for it or her hand slapped or anything, then she just kept moving in that direction.
So Rhonda instantly had major issues with cohabitating. After the show, in the 9 months that you were together, did you end up cohabitating fully?
Never did. No.
Did you want to?
I certainly did. I was like, if I'm going to be in a marriage, I want to wake up with my wife. I want to, have that time. But, she had major issues with it, in that she just didn't want to, first off, she didn't want to rush into it. And then,
sorry, you got married at first sight. I'm sorry. That's why I laughed. Yeah.
And so as, after decision day, we both were pretty exhausted. That was a long day. And we both kind of said, let's take a time out. So, and I was just trying to give her, space. We went for several weeks, where we tried to just date. And, I sensed that, something wasn't really, right. And she wanted to wait. And then I thought, well, we'll wait. And, it's just the waiting kept being longer and longer and longer. And we ultimately, at some point, I just said, you know what? I don't even want to move in.
Yeah.
I'm fine with just being where I'm at, and maybe we'll do that at some point, but I kind of let go of it. So
did you ever go from establishing that you were just dating to, okay, we are married again now, more than officially, or was it never really discussed?
yeah, I mean, there was no, okay, we've done our dating period. Now we're
Yeah.
back to being married. No, there was no discussion like that. It was just kind of like, okay, let's see how this goes. And then there was a point, so production wrapped up in like the first week in May. Um, and I have a house up in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And so we had planned to go up there for a couple of weeks. And so, that was again, we were living together, in that house for those 2 weeks. But when we came back from that, it was kind of, back to our separate places. So no, we never had that conversation like, okay, now we're moving on towards,
Yeah.
being married again or whatever. I don't know. We were just trying to, I think, navigate, again, decision day was a very exhausting day. And we were trying to figure out what the way forward was after all of that, and trying to give it space, trying to take some of the air out of the sails, because there had been a lot of trauma,
Yeah, I
drama,
can imagine, and we still have to get through some of it.
right?
Uh,
So
yeah. We had this moment at the outdoor concert where Rhonda, first she's quizzing you about what you're learning about her on the date, and then I think she starts crying about she's finding herself, and she's upset that you're not giving her the emotional support that she is looking for. I believe that's what's happening in this scene. She ends up, I believe she's getting angry with you. How did you, what was this moment or this day like for you from your side of things?
I mean, it started out great. We were going to a kind of a private concert of some musicians that she knew. They had set up at this home, and friends and family and certain fans were invited. And, so we got there, we had brought coolers, we brought chairs like everyone else did. And we were having just a really great time. Um, there was no conflict that I can, even remember. We were just having fun. And
Yeah.
so it was sort of, the concert had wrapped up and they were doing, a filming session, and she talked about a particular song that they played that evoked emotion for her. And I felt emotion during that song as well, because it's a kind of a song that sort of just tugs on your heartstrings. And while she was talking and being emotional, I was holding her hand. I was trying to look into her eyes. I was trying to convey that I was listening and feeling the emotion that she was expressing. And then I, just took the opportunity when she finished talking to say, well, I felt emotion too, and this is how it hit me. That's not what she was looking for. She was looking for me to react in a different way that I didn't. And so yeah, that was an area where then it got tense, because she was not very happy, exiting that. And, I just remember that being awkward and tense for the remainder of that day.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. Like from a viewer perspective, when I see a lot of these moments, and I know some other viewers felt this way. Sometimes I'm watching the show and I was just like, I don't know if Rhonda likes Pat. Like I felt that you liked her, but as a viewer, I was like, does she even like him? Like, what is her, like, why does she even want to continue through all of this? And especially her wanting to continue on decision day. Did you feel that way watching it back, or did you feel that way in the moment at all?
I don't know. I was very confused for a good portion of it. I wasn't sure. I wasn't
Okay.
sure. And to be quite honest with you, I did feel a distance. I did feel, to a certain extent, what I had described to friends as the Heisman pose. I was getting a stiff arm,
Uh-huh.
being kept at a certain distance. And so I was very conflicted going into decision day. I had actually, I the whole day before and the night and the morning of, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then I got to the filming location and they were doing a what they call on the fly interview, where they just do an individual interview before you get up and talk to experts or, each other or anything else. And I was asked a question about, what if I were to say yes? And I cut the person off, the producer, and I said, we don't need to go. I'm not going to answer that question because I'm not going to say yes. And I was as surprised as probably anyone to hear myself say that, but it was just the culmination of being really off balance and really unsure of whether I was really being received or not and whether I should continue this. And so I kind of decided at that time that I was going to say no. I went up and talked to the experts individually and said I was going to say no. They brought Rhonda in, and that was all in the episode, and said, "Are you going to say no?" And I said, "Yes, I'm going to say no." So I mean, but that was a very long day, and I tried to unravel that day for months and months and months afterwards. I couldn't really. I think we were on camera for at least 6 or 7 hours. It was
On
just.
decision day?
Oh yeah, easily.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really very emotional roller coaster ride that day. And so yeah, I think we were both depleted coming out of that. But I did not intend to say yes on decision day.
Did you feel nudged at all into your decision?
Absolutely. Yeah, I did.
By who?
I felt like the experts were really pushing kind of that agenda, that narrative. And, you know, I think in the end, um, they kind of worked us in that direction, or worked me in that direction. And then once I said I'll say yes, and I think that came at a particular period where they were saying, trying to soften the energy and the drama, and what about talk about things that you like about your partner, and things that went well for you, and kind of like, and that sort of softened the situation. And she showed some tenderness that I hadn't really experienced. And I think in the end I changed my mind, because I thought, well, maybe it is the cameras, maybe it is the scenario, the situation, and maybe I haven't given this my full effort. And one thing that I hold very important in my life, in everything I've ever done, and it was beat into me or drilled into me by my dad, is give it your full effort. Give it your full effort. So a whole bunch of variables came in, kind of from all directions, and yeah, like I said, I think I tried to unravel that for months afterwards. Like, what happened on that day? It was a bit of a blur.
Do you know if I'm hopefully going to get a chance to interview her, but do you know if Rhonda went in thinking that she was going to say yes or no? Did you know what her decision was going in?
What she said in the episode was that she went in with a state of peace, and that, whatever happened, whether I said yes or no, she was going to be good with that. So all I can read from that is that she intended to say yes. Now, if after all of the, what we went through on that very long day, and they had asked her first and she said no, then I would have said no.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm telling you, it was a bizarre day. It was a difficult day. It was an emotionally charged day. at the end of a very emotionally charged couple of months. And so, yeah, it was quite a lot.
Can imagine. I have a couple more moments to ask about the show before then. We get this moment where you're driving to her father's grave and she gets upset with you not listening to her. Uh, were you distracted because you were driving? Is that what happened?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm driving this car. I've got 6 GoPros in front of me. I got a van tailing me with more cameras and whatnot. I got traffic moving in and out as I'm driving an hour and a half down there. And I've got her telling me her whole life story, in rapid fire. And it was a lot to process. And then she would get angry at me for not remembering some fact about something that she said, like I had to clarify now, what about this person? What did you say? And she's like, oh, well, see, you're not listening to me. I'm like, what? I mean, I was really, really angry that day. By the time we got down to San Antonio, I was not talking with her, and I knew we had a full day of filming, and I'm like, I'm not going through this day of filming without resolving this right now, because I'm not going to go into whatever things they have planned for us and be on camera all day. When I was really angry. I was really angry with her for, basically treating me like a child, I thought, and, really holding me to this, this expectation that I thought was really unfair, that I can't recall these facts as she's spitting it at me the whole drive down there, and, getting corrected if I got something wrong. I was really angry.
Yeah. Did you feel that the conversation you had when you told her the way you felt about it, like improved things moving forward for an amount of time?
I mean, I wouldn't have been able to go through the rest of the
Yeah.
day if it hadn't. That
Past
was my
that day.
goal.
For how long did it fix things? Or did it?
Um, I mean, it lasted that day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, so, just our communication styles are just so very different.
They're very
And,
different. Yeah.
and the way we interact with and perceive the world is just so very different. And, she thinks it and says it. There's no filter. And, if it's taken, however it's taken, it's taken. She doesn't, that's just who she is. And I may think it, process it, maybe massage it around a little bit to soften it, because, I don't like to, make people uncomfortable or whatever. And, then I'll say it. And so, we're interacting on 2 different planes. And so if she was coming at me, with a lot, and I'm trying to process it all, and then I'm trying to figure out, what I'm going to say, and maybe sometimes I'm just overwhelmed. I just can't even, come up with and that's basically what happened at the gravesite. She's like, do you want to say something to my father? And I'm like, totally caught off guard. My
Yeah.
mind is racing. I'm trying to figure out what to say, or what I'm supposed to say or not say, or,
I think that would catch
whatever.
anybody off guard, by the way. I'm like an improviser, and that would catch me off the off the spot. Yeah.
So at times I would just lock up, and then she would interpret that as, oh, you're not listening, or you don't care, or you're not gonna, you're not gonna ask me a question or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm in backpedal mode.
Yeah.
So
Okay, so we get to this next one. Apparently, you bought concert tickets without asking her, and then you're at this store, and she wants to talk about having a shared calendar, and you don't, you maybe ignore her, and you go to ask about disposable gloves. Is that what happened?
yeah, so I was helping my mother execute a art project for 20 people. My mother's 84 years old at the time, so this is a big effort, and there was something missing that was, needed in the art project. And so she and I jump in the car to go to the nearby CVS. And along the way, she brings up this, I bought these tickets, which I thought would be a good thing, I figured I get the tickets. If she can't go, so what? I'll eat the ticket or I'll invite somebody else. But, for her, it was, I didn't check with her. And so then she brings up this idea of a shared calendar. And I'm like, now to hear her side of it, she, brought that up and I blew her off and ran into the store. That's not my recollection of what happened at all. We talked about it in the car on the way over, and I was agreeing vehemently. Yes, let's do a calendar. I'm familiar with Google Calendars. You can share calendars. That's a great idea. Let's do that. I'm agreeing 100%. And then we get out of the car and she's still talking about we need a calendar. And I'm like, okay, we've already talked about this. I've already agreed. I'm on board with you. And now I need to get the thing that we need to have because there's 20 people waiting, to have this art project. And, so I headed in to go do that. So, I mean, it was another case of, her interpreting something differently than I did. And then, it becoming a big issue. But this was very common in our interaction. I mean, and it just kept happening. And, ultimately, we just were not communicating effectively. I think we were both trying, but again, we perceive and process and interact in very different ways. And we were just missing each other,
Yeah. So we get after decision day. So I guess there's 9 months in between decision day and the reunion. Now, so what?
Actually, more than that. There was 9. Let's see, mate. Let me think. From decision day to the reunion was a year and a half.
It was a year and a half?
Yeah.
I don't know why I wrote 9 months. I don't know why.
Decision day was on April 20th of 2024, and the reunion was on November 2nd of 2025.
But you were together for 9 months.
We were together in total for 9 months, 3 months during production, and then 6 months after production, after decision day.
Oh, so you're together for 6 months after decision day.
Yes. Yeah.
For how many of those months would you say that you guys were like on the happier side of things?
I mean, there were times, I won't say it wasn't miserable the whole time, but we were definitely struggling with challenges. We were trying to work on them individually. We were both, seeing therapists at the time, and we were doing couples therapy together at the time. We were trying.
You were giving the real college try, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you wish you had just said no on decision day, or are you glad that you gave it a shot?
I am glad that I did. I came to understand after a lot of introspection. I will say after I ended the marriage in November of 2024, I didn't get back into relationship with a woman. This is my opportunity to just do a deep dive on me. And I really committed to that. I was working with my therapist. I was working, I was doing a lot of meditation, some of it just, on my own, some of it guided meditation. I was journaling almost every day. I was really trying to unravel a lot of things about myself and how I had evolved up to that stage, 60 years of life, and some areas where I really struggled in relationships before, including my marriage, my longtime marriage prior. And so, I was really working at trying to understand that and unravel that. And during that process, I really came to some fundamental understandings about myself and how I interact and why I interact that way and how I got to be that way and how some of that didn't serve me. And I really came to know that this show was a catalyst for me to really spend that time and to come to some conclusions and some transformational growth for me. And if I had said no on decision day, I don't think I would have achieved that level of transformational growth.
That's great. Yeah. So we heard a lot, I feel like, at the reunion from from Rhonda's perspective of what happened here, that led to the breakup. Something about her coming out and hearing a meditation on anger. How and you being in Europe for a month, how would you describe what led to the end of your relationship?
I think, uh, that's, to me, it's a fairly complicated question, but I had been, really giving it my best effort. And I felt like I was being held at arm's length. I never, I didn't feel like I was being led into, Rhonda's inner circle of her heart. And, I kept trying. My history is that I double down and I try that much harder when in that situation. And I really felt like I was losing myself. And I couldn't accept that after that had happened to me earlier in my life. And so, for me, it really boiled down to that I didn't feel seen, and she would like to say on occasion, just be yourself. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is myself. What I was receiving from her is, you know, be yourself. And then when I would be myself, she would say, essentially, not verbally, but in her actions, no, don't be yourself like that. Be yourself like this over here. Like I want you to be yourself. And I just came to the conclusion that we were not converging, nor would we ever converge, not with any amount of couples counseling or individual therapy. We were just essentially too different. And I knew that I gave it my best effort. And so it was time to move on.
Yes. So what was this meditation on anger, though, that you were listening to?
I mean, I listened to a particular guided meditation person that I use, Insight Timer. I've also used Calm. I've also used other ones, but Insight Timer, to listen to a particular teacher named Sarah Blondin. And so she has dozens and dozens of different guided meditations. And I had been in Europe for 5 weeks. The show said 4. No, I was there for 5 weeks, and I came back, and I had spent a lot of that 5 weeks solo traveling and doing a lot of introspection as well. And I came back kind of thinking, I don't know if I can continue this or not. And then, we started into like a 10-day, what was kind of like an intense social period. There were, events like almost every day with Rhonda's family or with Rhonda's friends or with, whatever. And I was in that period observing a lot. I was, trying to be present. I was trying to see how we might, move forward. But I also, I just felt this distance, and I also kind of felt like a pony, just like I was on parade, and it just didn't feel right to me. We had a couples therapy session kind of at the end of that 10 days, and there were some things that came out in that couples therapy that I basically didn't say it in the therapy session, but in my mind I said I'm done. And then it was within a day or two after that I ended the marriage.
She seemed to blame it on like a physical incompatibility, like you wanted more sex than her or something to that
Yeah.
regard? Do you feel that it didn't come down to completely that, and she?
I think, on the list of things that we were struggling with, that was, it was on the list, but it was not
Mhm.
number one. It wasn't
Yeah.
even number five. But I feel like the show kind of wanted to have that be a narrative. And so it's a little more maybe interesting for the viewing audience.
Yeah.
Um, you know, in the reunion episode, we got about 10 minutes. I think maybe I got a minute in that 10. So I said a whole lot more than that. We were probably our portion where Kevin was, interviewing us and we were ping ponging back and forth was probably 40 minutes, something like that.
No. Yeah.
And out of that 40-minute discussion, they aired maybe 1 to 1.5 minutes of me.
Yeah.
So I just kind of felt like, okay, well, I said a lot more than that, but they chose to not make it part of the show. So
Should have said something crazy. It would have made the tape.
There were a few things that did make it on there that were salient, and one was basically that for me, when the switch went off, it went off, and
Yeah.
it was over. There was no I've given it everything, and I'm not feeling like I'm being received. I'm not feeling like I'm being seen, and it's time for me to move on.
How do you feel about Rhonda today? And have you guys spoken since the reunion?
It's been a little awkward. There were some attempts to she asked me to tag her on posts that I was making on my Instagram, my public Instagram, and I did, and she commented on some of that. But then she was also reading some of the comments that were coming in, and then she got triggered and things got awkward, and so it's kind of like, yeah, we're not talking anymore. So,
Yeah, that I gotta say, this is all pretty par for the course as far as reality
yeah.
shows go. Yeah. Well, Patric, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story. Did you have anything you want to promote? Did you want to talk about your socials at all with anyone or anything?
I mean, I have a public Instagram account. I'm having fun with it. I'm putting out, a lot of stuff that I like to take pictures. I was a hobbyist for videography for quite a while. I enjoy, I'm the guy at the, when the family gathers that, we make sure we get some pictures of it. For each of my sons, I produced for their high school graduation, an hour-long "This Is Your Life" video kind of thing. So I just having fun with it, and putting stuff out there that I captured from behind the scenes, and I'll continue to do that. I don't have a whole lot more content that hasn't already been put out there, but as I interact with the other guys from the show, we're great friends, and we get together and we have fun, either as a group or individually, one-on-one, getting together. I've had a lot of fun getting to know those guys, and so some of that'll be out there. I'm just going to continue doing that. I don't know where it all ends or what the end game is, and maybe there isn't one. But I like to have fun. I am really, I like to live fully. I have a lot of interests that I like to travel. I am mostly retired now, so I have the flexibility to do that. I love to gather with my good friends from through the years and meet them in places around the world and do things. So I'll be sharing some of that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I've enjoyed your pictures with the cast, like you've talked about. They're good photos.
Yeah.
I like them. So
Yeah.
See your fun side, not just you getting, beaten down a little bit, Fun, Pat, let's go.
Yeah, I fully like to live, my life. I mean, I don't want to, make this weird, but my dad died. He was here today, gone tomorrow, and he lived life fully. And I fully learned that lesson from him. So you never know when you tomorrow you're not going to get tomorrow. And so you have to live fully. And I do. I mean, I embrace life. I'm an early riser and a late to bed, and I fill my day with joy and fun. But I also take responsibility. I'm the primary person responsible for my mother's health and her well-being, and I take that very seriously. But I also love to travel the world. I'm going to the Olympics in Italy coming up.
Oh, wow. Amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. I'm going to be making multiple trips to Europe. And then I'm going to Burning Man with Josh. So
are you going to have your ass out like Jalen? She had her ass out, I heard.
I don't know what I'm going to do.
Maybe. I don't know what happens there.
Yeah, I've never been. I've had a curiosity. I have a very good friend that went through a very challenging cancer battle and was very beaten down. And then he went to Burning Man, and he was, he just came out of that transformed and with a new vigor. And I'm just going there Josh is a great guy. He's a lot of fun, and he also knows how to do it. I was like questioning him. So how do you get into what do you do? And he's like, hey, I got you. You just throw in with me. And I'm like, all right, Josh, I'm in. And then he sent me, some things to go buy, and I've been buying them. So getting ready. We're going to go. It's going to be great. I
love it. I can't wait for the pictures. That's going to be amazing. I cannot wait. Well, Pat, thank you again. And for everybody else, please subscribe to Reality Alert on YouTube and all podcasting platforms, because we will have more Married at First Sight interviews coming up. And subscribe to patreon.com/reality alert. Use code HOLIDAY for 20% off all Patreon subscriptions, currently covering Love is Blind Italy, where the Olympics are happening. All right, Pat, thanks a bunch. Bye.
All right. Great chatting with you.